Welcome to the Three Martini Lunch. Grab a stool next to Greg Columbus of Radio America and Jim Garrity of National Review. Three Martinis coming up.
Hey, so glad you're with us for the Tuesday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. Good, bad, crazy martinis for you today. We're going to be talking a lot about what Jim wrote today with the Chinese developing an AI that would seem to be ahead of where we are. But Jim also has some important questions about what China is claiming there. But we'll also take a look at where things really stand. We'll also hear from another tech executive with some dystopian views, not that different than what we heard from Larry Ellison a few days ago. But we start with the good martini, and that is in my home state of Michigan, where Gary Peters is announcing that he will not be running for re-election to the U.S. Senate in 2026. Here's a little bit of what he had to say in his video statement.
Our founding fathers envisioned members of Congress as citizens, serving their country for a few terms, and then returning to private life. I agree. After 3 terms in the House and 2 terms in the Senate, I believe now is time for me to write a few more paragraphs in my current chapter and then turn over the reins. I will therefore not seek re-election in 2026.
Well, it's really the founding fathers that are inspiring him not to seek another term. That's great. Sometimes it's a fear of the public returning you to private life involuntarily that might be making that decision for you. Of course, Michigan, Trump beat Harris there narrowly last year, and Mike Rogers came very, very close, the Republican candidate, to winning the seat. Alyssa Slotkin won narrowly. She will now be the senior senator as of 2027. And so Jim, Gary Peters, as we often say, is kind of the name you give to someone in the witness relocation program. He's not a super prominent guy. He's not a Columbus family favorite either, but he has done a really good job of holding the USPS feet to the fire over rural and small town mail delivery, which my family very much appreciates in the northern part of the state, the Upper Peninsula. And so in addition to his record, most of which, he's a down the line lefty on most stuff, there's the question now of who's going to run for this seat, because Gretchen Whitmer is term limited for governor. So both of these races are coming at the same time. Whitmer has already said she's not running for this Senate seat, which means she probably is running for president in 2028. In the governor's race, Jocelyn Benson, the Secretary of State, is the only major Democrat in that race. Detroit Mayor Mike Duggan, who's quite popular, former Democrat turned independent, pretty pragmatic mayor of Detroit, also running for governor. Republicans, as usual, the bench is a little bit thin. When it comes to the Senate race, there's potentially the Lieutenant Governor Garland Gilchrist. There's the Attorney General Dana Nessel, who might be more odious to conservatives in Michigan than Whitmer, which is a very hard bar to clear. And then some people are looking at potential Republican Senate candidates, including Mike Rogers again, maybe. John James, who's already run for the Senate twice, and then Bill Huizenga, who's a congressman on the west side of the state along the Lake Michigan shoreline. So 2026 will be a midterm for Donald Trump, not usually good for Republicans, and in a state that's on the razor's edge, you probably got to give the edge to Democrats a little bit here. But what do you make of Peters calling it quits?
Well, first of all, listeners, never say that this podcast never says anything nice about Democrats. We give Gary Peters credit for his work on rural postal issues, which I know is front and center. Look, actually, if you live there, it probably is a big deal. Yes, Gary Peters does sound like an alias. Someday we will uncover his real name. But again, I want to give him a little bit of credit. He is 66 years old, which is when most Americans are thinking about retirement. And in the U.S. Senate, that usually means you got another good 18 years left in you. 2 decades, 3, At that point, at that age, you're really just a decade away from being old enough to coach the Las Vegas Raiders. And so you have this open seat, and I think if you're Democrats, you're probably like, the map already didn't have a lot of terribly vulnerable Republicans at stake. You got a couple of Democrats that look a little shaky. Yeah, the president's party usually does bad in midterms, but that's kind of been muted in a couple of the last few cycles. So we'll see what happens. And Michigan is very much a swing state. You didn't mention on that list, but I kind of wonder, Mike Rogers was basically 1/3 of a percentage point away from winning the Senate race last time. You got to figure, does he want to run for Senate again? Feel like maybe he's got better odds this time. Does he want to take a shot at governor? I also figure, by the way, Whitmer's declining to run for Senate when you've been a 2-term governor. That really does indicate interest in a presidential run. If I'm the Democrats, Michigan is a really important state. We should point out that the blue wall states, each successive census they lose another House seat and with it another electoral vote. So these blue wall states are only going to get less important as time goes on. I look at that and I kind of also I figure Pete Buttigieg, who already has bought property there with his husband. My guess is he's going to run for Senate. I think if you are aspiring president, it's probably better to be if you want to be in the center of the political discussion, you probably want to be in the Senate. I think executive experience is a really good thing for a potential governor to have, and I would rather be in the governor's mansion and trying to legislate and show that I can manage a state government well. But I suspect he will be sticking in the Senate race. So Michigan, bad news for the Columbus family back there in Michigan. You're going to be getting campaign ads probably starting next week and continuing for the entirety of the next 2 years for all of these levels, because somebody was pointing out open governor's race, open Senate race, at least 3 competitive House seats, I believe. Or it's early, but generally you'd be looking at 3 swing districts. Control of the state Senate and control of the state's House are also pretty close. So that's potentially at stake. So really all the marbles could be at stake in 2026. So if you are a direct mail company in Michigan, congratulations. It's lottery winning day. You're going to be very busy for the next 2 years.
That's true. And you're right about Pete Buttigieg. Despite his less than sterling record at the Department of Transportation, I'm sure he can't stay out of the fray. And I think Washington would probably be a more attractive job than governor. But if he takes either one, that means he's not in there for 2028. I mean, he's still only, 44 years old at this point? Or even in 2026.
Greg, you're saying somebody who just won a Senate seat wouldn't just instantly start running for president? Who do you think you are? Barack Obama? Kamala Harris? Yeah. No, my understanding, Greg, is actually he was on his way to announce his campaign, but the flights were delayed. You know how screwed up the airports are. So somebody should do something about that.
Well, it won't be him. Maybe it was Sean Duffy, who is going to be confirmed as our transportation secretary.
He'll have sled dog. If at any point a tree falls across some important artery in the U.S. transportation system, former lumberjack and MTV Road Rules competitor Sean Duffy will jump out there with an axe. He will clear it, get it all done himself. That much I look forward to.
He will be on it. I have no doubt. That's one of my favorite picks. Everybody likes Sean Duffy. Kind of wish he'd run for governor of Wisconsin, but maybe he understood what was coming here with the Trump administration. So anyway, opportunity abounds. Open seats definitely better than running against an incumbent. And if Republicans can find a strong candidate, that would be a wonderful pickup. A Republican has not won a Senate race in Michigan since 1994. Spencer Abraham. So tough one to climb, but they almost did it last year, so it's definitely doable. All right, Jim, on to our bad martini now, and it's also the subject of your morning jolt today. And China has allegedly jumped out in front of the AI race with a program called DeepSeek. So this isn't like some sort of metaphysical thing, but it is AI designed to compete with ChatGPT and a whole bunch of other things. And it's basically the reason that tech stocks went into a full-fledged panic yesterday, because allegedly this is beyond what we've been experiencing here in the United States. They also claim they did it ridiculously on the cheap to the tune of about $5 or $6 million, and they did it in just a couple of months. And I mean, you've obviously studied this a lot more than I have. So as anything that comes out of China, you have to test the claims and see if they actually make sense. But in terms of the technology, where does that put us and how far behind do we seem to be?
Yeah, so for anyone who is not listening closely, we're talking about DeepSeek, not the deep state. And chances are, if you had any money in tech stocks, your 401k is in deep something. So this actually had been out for a little while ago. I found a comment by former CEO of Google, Eric Schmidt, on ABC this week, back in December, saying, wow, the Chinese have this thing and it looks like what they're doing is as advanced as OpenAI and US artificial intelligence systems. For some reason, both at Davos last week and kind of over the weekend, it just picked up steam of, wow, this thing really is, again, it's comparable to OpenAI. It's the system where you type in a question and it gives you the answers. And it's passing all kinds of tests about, mathematical problems and reasoning and all this kind of stuff. But it basically, they said they did it astonishingly cheap and astonishingly fast, and you can operate it on much less advanced hardware. And they said they used much less advanced chips to do it. If all of these are true, then it's a really remarkable breakthrough. But listeners probably careful enough to notice that if they said they did it for less than $6 million, and OpenAI and all these things are spending billions upon billions of dollars. One of the reasons it costs so much is that somebody pointed out, with a lot of tech stuff, usually you're starting small and then you're building larger. With an artificial intelligence system, you want to start really big. You want to start with as much information in it as possible. So it's as advanced as possible, so it has less of a learning curve as it gets advanced and gets rolling. On this podcast, we've talked about this resurgence in nuclear power, the recommissioning of places like 3 Mile Island, and this development of other stuff. All of this is being drawn by the big tech companies who need to build new data centers to run these AI programs, which all require massive amounts of electricity. And also probably, listeners may remember the discussion of the Stargate program, not involving ancient Egyptians and aliens, but a massive investment in artificial intelligence involving OpenAI that Trump announced to much fanfare. Originally, it was going to be $100 billion. Then it got up to $200 billion. Now they're talking $500 billion. This is a huge deal. And one of the reasons that the market, these tech stocks tanked was this idea of, oh my goodness, China's figured out how to do this without all of these massive expenses. Some of this, assuming this is true, is a second mover objective. The idea that the first programs kind of figured out how to do it, and now this Chinese system, DeepSeek, was trying to do the same thing with a roadmap of the other ones. The other question was, what kind of chips were they using by NVIDIA? Back in the Biden administration, they had attempted to restrict the number of advanced chips that could be sent to China. And the belief was that you needed these kinds of really advanced chips to run a good AI program. DeepSeek claims that it's using the less advanced NVIDIA chips that are not covered by this embargo. There's a good reason to wonder if that's the case, whether they had a large supply from before the embargo went in effect, or whether there's what they call the Singapore backdoor. I know that sounds like a drink or something off color, but in fact, the Singapore backdoor is basically just smuggling. It's basically a way you export it to a legit company in Singapore that turns around and sends it there. I would also point out, and this is one of the things that was really fun to write about in today's Morning Jolt, if I said to you, right now there's like oil smuggling in which whole tankers are working around embargoes and things like that. If I asked you to smuggle a book into a country, you probably could figure out a way to do it. You could either put it in your suitcase or put it in a secret compartment or ship it there and not label the package accurately and hope that the package didn't get searched. And that's all it would do. And basically these chips are small and flat and fairly easy to transport. So one possibility is that they actually have a lot more of these advanced chips than they're letting on, and that's what's actually fueling it. I would point out that, the sheer cost, the sheer amount of time, they said it basically took 2 months to get this thing up and running. Tough to verify that. And not a lot is known about that. When a source like CNBC says, we reached out to DeepSeek for comment repeatedly and never got a response, I don't know about you, Greg, but my spider sense starts tingling that something's not quite right here. So it's an interesting development. I think there's reason to wonder whether it's there, quite as advanced as they're claiming. Maybe this is a good time to buy the dip on some of these U.S. tech stock companies. But I also kind of look, the applications of artificial intelligence to all kinds of systems, including military applications, including domestic surveillance applications and things like that. Those are far-reaching, and this is what has everybody from Elon Musk to Trump to Anderson to all kinds of anybody who's in this field says if the U.S. is not ahead in the artificial intelligence game, then there are going to be big geopolitical repercussions. I would point out everybody who's saying this is a venture capitalist, wants more venture capital. Like they all have an investment, literally or metaphorically, in the U.S. staying ahead in AI. But considering all the applications of this, I don't think this is a far-fetched one. Maybe quantum computing is also important, but that's a whole different novel. And just the idea of, this is something worth keeping an eye on. But that having been said, everything that's being announced by DeepSeek has been taken at face value. And I know this is going to shock people in light of the CIA's declaration. Oh, hey, maybe it was a lab leak. It's conceivable that not everything we're being told by an entity in China is true. I know you may want to sit down on your fainting couch or something, but nonetheless, this is something worth watching. And, I try to write the Morning Jolt as best I can every day. This was a really fun one because I learned a lot about AI, how it works, and in particular, how these chips are used and the not so strict sanctions we have in place in getting them to China.
And you're right. I mean, I don't know if it's overstating it to say that this is the modern day version of the space race, only we don't know where the end game is. Then it was getting on the moon, and we don't know exactly where the finish line is now, but you definitely want to stay ahead. The other thing that's just mind-boggling, Jim, we've been through this whole TikTok debate for years now about this app. There's really CCP spyware. They're sucking in all the data off your phone, all down to the very smallest minutia. Hey, Guess what's new to the App Store? The DeepSeek app, which does the exact same thing, if it's not even more intrusive. So apparently we're slow learners, Jim.
I was going to say that was kind of infuriating. It's the top selling app in the App Store for the past week. And the one before that was Redbook, the substitute for TikTok. Like Redbook and DeepSeek. The next one's going to be called We're Spying on You. Silly Americans. So we'll see.
Amazing. Come on, people. You got to be smarter than that. All right, Jim, as long as we're talking about these advanced tech people, let's go back to some of the CEOs in our own country. Just last week, we had the clip from Larry Ellison, which was actually from last year, but nonetheless, he was making a pretty chilling point about how he saw AI as basically a tool for a surveillance state. But it's going to be great. It's going to keep an eye on the police and make sure they're doing their job the right way. And it's going to record and report on everything we do so we're behaving properly. Yeah, I don't think so, Larry. We don't want any of that. I realize we're under surveillance a lot of the time now already. We don't need to go any further. But now you've got Sam Altman. He's the head of OpenAI, who I'm sure lost a little bit of money yesterday. But he was also at the White House with Larry Ellison last week. But he did not make as many headlines until he had this little thing to say. Just makes him sound like a Bond villain, Jim, about, yes, this is coming and it's going to change everything.
I still expect, although I don't know what, and this is over a long period of time. This is not a like next year or, the year after that kind of thing. But over a long period of time, I still expect that there will be some change required to the social contract, given how powerful we expect this technology to be. I'm not a believer that there won't be any jobs. I think we always find new things to do. But I do think like the whole structure of society itself will be up for some degree of debate and reconfiguration.
So in about 10 seconds, he went from some changes to the social contract to completely reconfiguring society, Jim. And so, I mean, I know these people have massive egos and they think they're literally changing the world. To some extent, they are. Anytime we have major technological advances, whether it's the Industrial Revolution to the digital age that we're in now, life is going to change for people. But these people have a complex that is quite something to behold.
First of all, apparently one of the reasons that Elon Musk was scoffing about the Stargate announcement was the involvement of Sam Altman. And somebody asked Trump about this, and Trump said, oh, these two guys hate each other. That's what this is about. Look, when Elon Musk thinks you're an egomaniac, that's a sign. It's like Michael Jackson calling you weird or Michael Jordan calling you good at basketball. The second thing for Altman, and it's not his fault, but when a tech bro named Sam comes along and says, I've got this remarkable idea that's going to change society, just grab your wallet. Just, look, he's a completely different guy than Sam Bankman-Fried, but nonetheless, we get a little, wary when we see this. I should not make fun of him too much. To his credit, he's making these sweeping statements about the total reorganization of society. But he is not holding his finger to his lip like Dr. Evil. He's not stroking a cat on his lap, and he does not have a metal, fist where he's saying, "I'll get you next time, Gadget," or any of these things we've come to associate with supervillains. I could almost get on board back when we were doing the NSA surveillance controversies. The ability of the NSA to vacuum up massive amounts of data was kind of something unprecedented. And all of our previous experience with criminology and the law and surveillance techniques, traditional wiretaps, it just kind of was different. And the ability of technology, like I used to say, think back to Sherlock Holmes. And Sherlock Holmes would go to a crime scene and with great skills of deduction, determine things about who had committed the crime. Sherlock Holmes didn't have the ability, Watson, we will press this button and we will listen to every conversation in London and we will look at every letter that is written and we will look at, that the ability to do this created issues and problems that really didn't have a precedent and that our laws were probably not well designed for. My sense was that if you had an actual FISA court that approved, let's say less than 99% of every request from the FBI, that maybe we'd have less of a concern, and or if NSA employees would stop spying on their exes, it probably would have greater public trust about this sort of thing. I don't doubt that AI is going to do some amazing things, and it's going to, you're going to have this question of the haves and the have-nots, and what happens when people start relying on AI for their decisions. We're, right now, the only serious casualties of AI decision making have been Charles Pierce saying that Bush to pardon his son, and Ana Navarro saying, what was it? Was it Dick Hurts? Was it Butt Hurts or something like that? There was some obviously made up one that a quote unquote hallucination from OpenAI had told her. And neither one of these figures, shockingly, had the good sense to double check that against any actual historical records. But the question is, how far is it from this to Skynet? How far is it from putting an AI in charge of a system with really important consequences, unlike idiot liberal commentators? And what does that lead to? And I think that's a real genuine fear here. I don't look, the world needs people like Sam Altman who totally believe in a technology and who think that they're going to do something amazing and transform the world, and they want to be the next Thomas Edison. They want to be someone who creates something that makes life better for everybody. But I look at those people and I just kind of see a Miles Dyson. I just see somebody who's got the best of intentions and has no idea what's coming down the pike and how the ways that could affect them. Again, we should not rely entirely on James Cameron for our understanding of these issues, but it does get a little bit nervous when you have these people who seem to have these look, I'm inventing something and it's just going to completely reorganize society. And you're always like, again, we're both big C and small c conservatives. Society's okay. Let people figure out how they want to do it. We don't need you to come down with 2 new silicon tablets saying, look, I've got a set of new rules. It's all going to work out great for everybody.
Yeah, well said about that. So I'm trying to decide whether this is a Bond movie or this is like the prequel to Minority Report with the precogs, and we know what evil you're going to do before you even do it, and we're going to arrest you before it happens. And so I preferred when those were science fiction as opposed to documentaries, but let's hope we don't get there. Jim, have a good day. See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow, Greg.
Jim Garrity, National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks so much for being with us today. Please be sure to subscribe to our podcast if you don't already. Tell your friends to do so as well. We'd love to have them listening. Thanks also for your 5-star ratings and your kind reviews. Please keep those coming. Get us on your home devices. All you have to say is play 3 Martini Lunch podcast. Follow us both on X. He's at Jim Garrity. I'm at Greg Corombos. Join us again Wednesday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.